Ancient Chinese legends tell us of a mythological creature known as the Great Dragon King of the Sea. And the people believe that the Great Dragon King controls the weather, the wind, the rain, and the sun. This is a very old but timeless story about the Great Dragon King of the Sea. Many years ago, in the island village of Kowlow, the people who lived there had known years of good fortune. During the growing season, there had always been plenty of rain. The harvests always large. The rivers were filled with fish, and so fishing had been plentiful. And in the marketplace, there was always much buying and selling and trading. The people of the village of Kowlow had lived in good fortune for so long that not only did everyone have what they needed, they also had everything that they wanted. And because of this, there were many years of happiness and joy. You see, the people of Kowlow believed that the great dragon king of the sea was watching over them and had heard their prayers. And that's why life had been so good for everyone in the village for so long. But one day in the marketplace, an argument broke out. There was a man that day who accused the chicken farmer of selling him a chicken that didn't lay eggs. The chicken farmer said, "I never sell hens that don't lay eggs." But the man insisted that the hen that had been sold to him had never laid an egg, and the argument grew more heated. When the man left, the chicken farmer turned and started to argue with his wife. He blamed her for not taking care of the chickens well enough. And because of that, they had raised hens that didn't lay eggs. The wife insisted that she had taken good care of their chickens, but they argued about that. And when the farmer's wife went home, why, she went out into the chicken yard and started to argue with their son. She said, "You did not warm and hatch the right eggs. And because of that, we have raised hens that don't lay." And the son, well, he couldn't argue back with his mother. So he went out into the chicken yard and he yelled at all the hens. Well, those hens didn't know what to do. They just looked up at the boy and squawked, "Buck, buck, buck, buck." Now, this argument spread throughout the entire village, for the people there started to take sides. Some of them took sides with the man who claimed that that chicken had never laid eggs. Some of the people of the village took sides with the chicken farmer, and they said he would never sell a hen that didn't lay eggs. And the argument grew and spread. And this was in a time when we didn't have Instagram or Facebook. Finally, all the people of that village did was argue. And they forgot all about those years that had been so good to them and how rich their lives had been. Now, the great dragon king of the sea, who controlled the weather, heard the people of Kowlow arguing. And so one day, he left his palace at the depths of the sea and swam up through the water. He burst through the water and into the air, and with one great sweep of his tail, he knocked all the rain clouds out of the sky. And now the hot, bright sun was beating down on the land. For days, the sun beat down, but the people of Kowlow were so busy arguing, they didn't notice. The sun beat down so hot and bright that it dried up all the water in the rivers and the streams, and the fish, well, they suffered and died. And the people didn't notice. The sun was so hot that it melted all the snow on the tops of the mountains. The people didn't notice, for they were too busy arguing. Until finally the sun beat down so much that it dried up the soil and their crops withered and died. But still the people argued. until finally one day they realized that there wasn't enough water and there wasn't enough food to feed their families. And everyone was suffering until finally the youngest and the oldest members of the village started to die. It was only when things had gotten to their worst that the people of Kowlow stopped arguing. For them, they had lost so many loved ones. It was only then that they realized how very thoughtless they had become. And so each person walked down to the edge of the sea, and they prayed to the great dragon, king of the sea, to make it rain. But when they prayed, they were only praying for the health of their own crops. They were only praying for the survival of the members of their own family. And when the great dragon king heard their selfish prayers, well, he left his watery palace at the depths of the sea again. And he swam up through the water and burst into the sky. And with one swoop of his great tail, well, he caused a wind to start to blow. That wind started to blow across the sea. And when it connected to the air that had been warmed by the sun for so many days, why rain clouds started to form. More and more rain clouds formed until they lifted up into the sky. And finally, the entire sky was filled with rain clouds. And then the great dragon, king of the sea, with one more swoop of his tail, broke those clouds open, and it started to rain. It rained, and it rained, and it rained for days. It rained so much that not only were the streams and the rivers full now, but they overflowed their banks. It rained and it rained and it rained for so many days that all the fields were flooded, all the houses were flooded, all of their clothing was drenched. It rained and it rained for so many days that the people of the village started to worry, and they wondered if it would ever stop raining. Now, at that time, the great dragon king of the sea sent a message to the village. That message said, "You must send me your youngest and bravest and most honest person." The villagers got together, and it wasn't hard to decide who to send, for they sent Ping, who was a young person in the village who had always lived with great honesty and great bravery. Little Ping wandered down to the edge of the sea and waited for the great dragon king to arrive. Finally, the dragon king rose to the surface of the water and swam close enough to Ping to talk. The dragon king said, "Ping, you are the bravest and most honest person in your village. You must take this message back to your people. Tell them that they can never forget to be grateful for their good fortune, that they have to care not only for themselves, but for the good fortune of everyone in the village. And they have to remember that just like the weather in life, things can change in an instant. So they must always be grateful." And with that message in their hearts, that young person went back to the village and shared it with their people. When the village people heard the message from the great dragon king, they knew what they had to do. And together, everyone walked to the edge of the sea, and they clasped hands. And together, they prayed to the great dragon king of the sea. They asked for the rains to stop. They asked to be forgiven. And with those prayers heard, the great dragon king of the sea left his watery palace one last time. And he swam all the way through the water and burst into the air. And with one great swoop of his tail, he knocked all those rain clouds out of the sky. The people of the village cried tears of joy, and they hugged each other But when the great dragon king of the sea was returning to the water, why, he must have dropped the belt from his robes. For when the people of Kowlow looked up again, they saw a beautiful arc of many colors stretching across the sky. It was the first time that they had seen a rainbow. Now, it has been years and decades since that day. But even now, after it rains, when the people of Cow look up and they see a rainbow stretching across the sky, why, they always say that the great dragon king of the sea is watching over them. But not only that, they remember to always be grateful for their good fortune. They remember how important it is to care not only for themselves, but for the good fortune of everyone in their village. And they remember that just like the weather, in life, things can change in an instant.